Dark Age Productions, The One Piece Crew. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University, coming to you today as the one, the only Vice Admiral Garp, celebrating on a beach somewhere in the Grand Line this amazing interaction he just had with his grandson, who finally was able to tell Grandpa, I don't need you. And this is exactly what every young man and every father and grandfather need to work out. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, joining me tonight's discussion is this amazing crew here. Please tell everyone who you are, what you do, and we'll start with Rio.
Well, all right. Hello, I'm Rio Shigeta. I am an actor of many kinds, a man of a dozen faces, salesman by day, dungeon master by night, and pirate by podcast. Excited to be here again. And I am our navigator on the crew.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Everybody else, go ahead and tell your role. As you can probably tell, I'm the pseudo captain, so we'll go from there. Kristen, how about you?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Farrell. I am an actor as well, singer, and Pure Bar instructor, as well as a realtor in the Chicagoland area. So if you're looking to buy a house, I'm your girl. I'm on this ship, this journey. I am the shop.
We didn't know you had a possible dual role as a singer. So I went and looked at some of your reels. Are you singing in the background on a lot of those? Are you singing in the background on some of your reels?
Maybe.
She is a singer.
No, it was amazing. Yeah. I didn't see a voice credit, but nonetheless, it was fantastic. So maybe we'll have to ask you to sing later.
Oh, goodness.
How about you, Maisha?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maisha Tansen Orthi, and I am a master's student in ISU, and I'm studying cognitive and experimental psychology at ISU currently right now. I call myself a self-proclaimed pop culture nerd because I tend to consume everything, and One Piece is definitely one of my very, very favorite anime and manga. And in the ship, I am the enforcer, and I keep things like I don't know, whatever I do things in secrets. I keep the ship on a point. So and very nice to meet everyone, and very glad to be here.
Fantastico. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone out there, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Mr. Ray Hurd, voice actor extraordinaire. He has voiced popular characters on hit shows such as My Hero Academia, One Piece, of course, and Dragon Ball Super. Ray, welcome to the crew.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Salutes for everyone.
So, Ray, we have to start off with a quick question. We know that you voiced Admiral Kizaru in the English version of One Piece. What was it like doing that role?
That was a lot of fun. It was the second character that I was cast for. The first being Azuma for Fairy Tail, excuse me. So, and that was a very good year for me starting out because I won an award without even realizing that was a thing until I got a call. I got an email from a site reflecting that I was a breakthrough voice actor of that year. So I'd done 4 major characters at a time when Funimation was only allowing one at a time. So Azuma was the first. Admiral Kizaru was the second, and then I had 2 others that I do not remember at the moment, but they were great characters. Admiral Kizaru was when I first saw him, and I'm giving you the long answer. Do you want the long answer?
We want the long answer, absolutely.
Yeah. The long answer, let me turn that off, is when I had done or had gotten that character, I looked at him and at first I had the complete wrong idea of what he was. I thought he was he looked like a character straight out of the 70s, to be honest with you. I thought Italian pimp, I think is what I told you when I first started doing the voice for him. I had it all wrong. And I knew about One Piece, but I didn't know a whole lot of the story. So they had to really get me in ship shape on that. And it was, I'm talking like, I'm Admiral Kizaru, guys. And they were like, no, really. So quickly corrected me. And once I got a better understanding of the character and I understood how powerful he is,
Mm.
and that he is considered the big guns, preferably would rather not fight, but is all for fight if that was necessary. I got a better understanding of how the approach was, or how it should be, rather. And that was to, he's so powerful that he should be totally relaxed, completely laid,
Yes.
almost absolutely nothing at that time anyway could hurt him. And yeah, he was a really, really interesting character. And so that's when I relaxed my voice and came into it really comfortable.
Mm.
Nothing is a problem. We don't need to fight. Let's just hang out, fix it this way. That was how that voice came to me.
Yeah, very much like the Mihawk energy we got, where he just spoke softly, calmly, and would draw a big sword if he needed to, right? So, does anybody else want to ask Ray a question while we have him here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think I and probably a lot of aspiring voice actors are kind of interested in something like this character, where you're going into a series that's fairly far along, and you're sort of given a character description, but like you said, going into it, you don't have a whole lot. I'm kind of interested in like how that works for you. I mean, with your resume, you've had several different offers and several different characters that you've played. What does the casting process look like, where you're given the role, you've gotten the role based on, you know, an audition or just, you know, direct to offer, whatever it is, and what does that description look like for the character? And then what is the development process in the studio once you're there to like arrive to recording for that character?
After initially, once they get past the "can we trust you" phase of then over time they begin to it's really thrown at you, and it's more or less your job as a voice actor to critique the overall design of the character, the way they look, how, you know, whether they have how they're it's all about presentation. So they give you this image of what the character looks like. If they have glasses, you know, are they kind of a nerd, or are they are the glasses part of the ensemble? Which in anime, you know, usually like I do the King of Beasts for the Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, which is basically I don't know if I should say it is the anime Beauty and the Beast, basically.
But with an anime sensibility, as we said.
Very strong anime sensibility. And that Sadifi is the beauty of the story, and she wears the same outfit. You know, even though I was like at some point, please, you know, she's becoming the queen. You know, I have my issues, but anyway, with that, so you know, but it's like it's a part of the ensemble. So you take that and that particular character, for example, the King of Beasts, he has very large teeth. So I'm looking at him. He's got the mouth of an animal, but these huge saber teeth. But he's very regal in his approach. So my posture would probably change. You know, when I come to it, I'm looking at him, you know, noticing that he is very well spoken. He's very educated, but at the same time, you know, he has to so his diction has got to be, you know, really good. And at the same time, I got to talk around these teeth. So what best approach, you know, should I have in breaking that down? And that's what's thrown at you really, really fast. So it's like, come in, and once you're, like I said, the audition, trust me phase, you know, they expect you to be able to really you got to have tools in the toolkit, you know, and you know, you look at that character and it's like, oh, okay, well, he's this way, and okay, so I'll come up right, and you know, and now he's got to pronounce his words right, and I'm thinking of people to, you know, help me in with that character, and my first thought was, you know, James Earl Jones is King Jafar and in Coming to America. So he's very roundabout because he has to get around these teeth and say things in such a way that, you know, gets the words out. But then, of course, to add a little more depth to the character, I want him to tap his words maybe. And so I do a little bit of Orson Welles, and I put some of the way that he says some of his words and the nuances and his talk and his speech. And then on top of that, I'll throw in a little Yul Brynner, if you remember him as some of his parts. The king, I think
The
it was
King and I.
King
The
and
King and
I,
I. Yep.
Ramses and Ten Commandments was
Ten
my favorite.
Commandments. Yeah.
Because in Westworld he almost didn't speak at all, but but yes, and he just the way that he pronounced his words, and so I would get a lot of good feedback with from the fans on. Somebody said once that I live by that R. I used the word robust, and the way that he said it, I had to, you know. So it's things like that. It's just a breakdown. And forgive me if all questions seem loaded, and I have long answers, but it is a task. So basically, you look at the character and you break it down based on the appearance and what you already know. They give you good information. The directors are really good there at Crunchy, and they're good at giving you a lot of backstory.
Mhm. Very, very cool. I mean, so my background, I trained as a theater actor at the University of Illinois several years ago. And so to me, it's sort of terrifying to not have the whole script. I'm used to getting the script as a whole, reading it, analyzing the characters, all the interactions, and instead to just be given, a basic description, a picture, and then hopefully a good staff that backs you up, and to just build that seems terrifying to me, but also just amazing.
Well,
And so great
sorry.
respect.
No, thank you. Yeah, I can tell you a lot about that because it's different with different things. Like with anime, at least you have more character development. By the time you get the character, it's already been done. But when you're dealing with characters that they're bringing out brand new, especially if it's for example, an American animation of any kind, and you have to make that character right on the fly. A lot of what I said goes into that, and it's at that point more so than even with an anime character, because you don't have that backstory necessarily. You just have a little. It's even less information. So you are truly building the character, and then they tailor the way the character is animated around you, which ultimately is better. But
yeah,
you come with this backstory, and people are already fans of this character. They've already read the manga. They've already gone into it. Now you have a responsibility. It's almost like doing doing an autobiographical thing. So the pressure is heavier when you're doing anime, in my opinion.
That's so cool to hear, and I specifically, and I'm going to wrap this up quick because I feel like I'm bogarting you and all this amazing insight. Is that Kizaru is this character, and I feel like you were able to arrive there, and yet it's such a layered character in that Oda does a lot of this stuff where he references real people, he references like cultural things. Kizaru, in fact, is based on Kunie Tanaka, who is, and I feel like was it Italian gangster, Italian pimp, isn't so far off in terms of like the image that he sort of comported himself as.
Right.
So the appearance does say a lot, I think. And while it's sort of interesting how you could go one direction and sort of based on the visual of the character, it could be completely one thing, but then add a little bit more context, and then you get something else that's really sort of attractive to the American viewer. I think that's really cool.
You nailed the head on that one, because that's the bridge that we're responsible for. We are the bridge, so to speak. We have to bridge that gap between the Japanese audience and the American audience in that regard, because it's definitely a cultural thing. So whereas it might be said, like going back to the Leonhardt character for the Sacrificial Princess, he's that was the biggest bridge I think I had to get because his the Japanese voice for it is very straight. It's very straight, man. It's doesn't change. So for the American audience, we're more prone to, we see something and we almost expect you to sound like the way you look, versus it wasn't the same. So if it's played down a lot in the Japanese, and so I'm like, oh, that's totally not going to work. If I were to bring the same, come to it the same way that they did. And so, yeah, that's a lot of what we have to deal with as voice actors on the anime side. It's like, yeah, how can we make this work for our audience? So,
all right then. Thanks for those answers to those questions, Ray. We truly appreciate it. And now what we need to do is go back to some viewer mail. If you guys remember in our last episode, we had a fantastic series of questions from Levi Adista. He was very pleased that we answered his question, and he wrote the following. Wow, thanks for really discussing my comment. I appreciate that. If you want to discuss something about One Piece, I'd like to hear your opinion about biological fathers in the series, like Usopp's situation. And if you all caught up with the manga or anime, biological fathers in One Piece is basically a selfish jerk who leaves their family or abandons them. The stepdad is always better. Honestly, it's such a trope in shonen manga. It happens in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood too, and we will talk about that. It's a different type of abandonment. Is it cultural-based tropes or one of writing formula or something else?
A very good question.
Well, Maisha, go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys put me on the spot. But like when the commenter was talking about the biological father abandoning their sons in the anime, this is very true. It's true for Hunter x Hunter. It's true for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And it's true for One Piece. Like, yeah, Usopp's father, like, for whatever reason, I still don't know the reason that he left Usopp to like be pirate and not take care of him. And it's a very reoccurring thing in manga, I feel like, but I don't know if there's any cultural aspect to it or not, because in general, like as part of the Asian community, I know that in Asia, like parent-child interaction is a very strict thing. It's very formal. It's very like not very how is it, friendly. It's more of a point of respect instead of like being a friend to them. I am very close with my parents, but I'm not their friend for sure. So maybe that's a thing that's playing in this role or something. Maybe you can have better ideas about it.
Well, yeah, sort of. So I come from a multicultural background. My father is Japanese, my mother is American, and my situation might be a little bit unique, but maybe more accentuated, such that I did feel a more structured family environment in Japan, where the father is a very reverential figure that is to be respected and not to be crossed, and also this may be personal to me, but I think more common than not, fathers tend to be more focused on careers and income and keep supporting the family financially. And in doing so, they tend to spend a lot more time out of the household, while the child rearing tends to be more the maternal role. Now, for me, a little bit interesting because Maisha, kind of like you said, the friendship relationship is a little bit different. I would definitely say that my mother's and my relationship is much more friendship than parental. Whereas I think my father and I have a much more a regard for our positions in the family, and so I think in that what I experience is common in Japan, in that especially sons and rambunctious sons, which are the trope of shonen main characters, they tend to clash with their fathers. They tend to separate from their fathers and sometimes reunite later along the line. It sort of depends, but it's interesting to see some anime that transcend that. A lot of them, like you said, Hunter x Hunter and definitely One Piece do have a tricky relationship. And Naruto, for example, kind of the same. Father kind of was this figure that went off or just wasn't present. I think the interesting thing to look at, some anime have gone beyond that. If you look at Dragon Ball, if you look at Boruto, which is the continuation of Naruto, there are fathers that are a little bit different in their relationship. So there is a culture that sort of is branching off from it. But like you're saying, I think the trope comes from the fact that a lot of families in Japan do have a father figure that is might be perceived by a young man as being absent.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that angst, that need for male bonding, does come in the form of surrogate fathers. So those are teachers, those are guides, mentors in different forms, either be it a school teacher or a sport coach or an art teacher. You tend to find male and paternal guidance not necessarily in the family structure. So I don't think we're off at all. I think this is very much based in reality and the experience of a lot of young men in Japan over the course of the last 20 to 30 years.
So I'm going to agree with you and tell you that's one of the reasons I love this show. The word abandon is strong. Daddy's out in the Grand Line. Like it or not, Daddy's dealing with the mess that allows whatever happens back at home to be happening financially.
Mm-hmm.
If Daddy's out there and he's trusting that you are going to find people to help you go where you need to go, that's Grand Line training. I'm sorry, but in Fullmetal Alchemist, when they find their teacher, Mizumi, is that her name? They find her, right? And she trains them. Now, Fullmetal Alchemist does such a good job of the whole father thing, right? Because Hohenheim is simply cursed, and he can't stay where he is, and he ends up saving the day to some extent by creating, spending his lifetime creating the counter circle. So I think what's interesting is it does feel like someone's been left behind, but Usopp loves his dad. He's in pain because he misses him, right? All these characters love their dads. We haven't seen Luffy's dad yet. I know you guys know more than I do because I haven't seen as much of the anime. But
we haven't talked about Sanji's dad yet too.
No, we haven't. So I'm not saying every dad is going to be good, but I do think you're right. There's a reverence, and I do think there's a bittersweet kind of love reflected in the way they write, maybe a bit of longing. And then the way they end this episode between Grandpa and Luffy, that's the story. I needed you to believe you could do this, man. And someone other than me, brother. I just, you got to get out there and do it. And so, yeah.
But is it that Usopp loves? Sorry, does he love his father, or does he love the idea of his father? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's more like it.
The idea of his father. Yeah, that's his father is a pirate, and that's the sort of life he wants. I think that's most. Yeah.
So he longs for his father. We can say that absolutely.
But then again, one thing that I agree with you that that's how people grow, and that's how they find someone else, find their own family, the whole found family trope. But I just don't like the idea that you give birth to this person and just don't take any responsibility and just leave. I agree with Hohenheim's case, and Hohenheim is cursed, and I agree with that. But whatever happened to Usopp's father or Luffy's father, or in terms of Sanji, or from Hunter x Hunter, I don't like Jean at all from Hunter x Hunter. So that's the kind of thing I cannot really understand. And maybe Japanese culture, maybe the anime, they're just portraying it, and they're not portraying it as a negative or a positive way. It's just the way I interpret is not in a very good light, I guess. No. But then again, I'm very how do I say it? My views are very feminist and stuff like that. So
hey, look, I mothered my kids to death, man. I mean, let's face it, that's what I did. At the same time, in the Japanese culture, it's not like the father's gone and become a pirate. He's just not as present, right? Yeah. And he is available if you need him per se. Mm-hmm. I do love the line, and we'll talk about it later, where Garp says, "I needed you to know it." And Luffy says, "Well, couldn't you have gone a bit easier?" And I think that's the moment in the metaphor where the youth are saying to dads, God, give me a break. Did you really have to do it like that? Which could be, as you're talking about, Maisha, some of the feminist critique of you just leaving, dude. So all those things, all those arguments that got in there as far as I was concerned, right? And yeah, I thought that issue was all dealt with, not in a way where there's an answer, but all the complexities are reflected in what everybody did. And I just loved it.
Well, I think too.
Go ahead.
They did have flashbacks. It wasn't like he wasn't present in his in Luffy's life at all. I mean, they did a flashback where they showed, because and then he says it. You know, I've always tried to show you that this is not what the path that you should take.
Yep.
He had. It wasn't that he wasn't in his life. We just spent a lot of time showing Shanks and Luffy's experiences, and I can relate because my grandfather was a heavy influence in my life, and like like Maisha was explaining, like there was a certain reverence for my grandfather because he had taken all of his children when they were very young. They were he and my grandmother had divorced, and probably was a good thing for them. They were both very headstrong people, and it turned out really, really great for her. She went back to school and became a musician and a music teacher at a historically black high school in Fort Worth. And my grandfather was an educated man as well, and it was very hard for him, but he had started a family business as a result, and he had 4 children to take care of. And so in that case, it was kind of like a maternal abandonment for them. So, but I do see the tropes that you're talking about here in anime in general, because a lot of times I'm like, where are the parents? As I'm watching, like, how are they able to do all this exploring? Like, where are their parents? But I have played characters where, stuck in a dating sim where the father was very much present, but he was subjugated, and it was like there's always an element of traditionalism, I believe, is the best way to put it with anime, given that there's such a rigid structure in the Japanese culture. And to me, it's like 1950s America. I mean, if the way I look at it, it's the father generally doing this, and like you said, he comes back or when he comes to the house, it's kind of like watching I Love Lucy. It's like he's out there doing his thing. He's trying to make a living for the family, but because of that, he's not able to be home. And like he wants to be, but it's still yet involved. And going back to Garp, it's like he was there. He just had to fight Luffy the whole time. It's like Luffy had his own ideas. Yep. He was kind of his own man even then. You know what I mean? He knew what he always wanted to be. And I love the way this series ended, because even through all of that, after there was this obvious separation and Luffy goes out into the world and he starts to explore, and then we catch up to it. All these years later, he's, working on becoming a pirate. And that ending, I'm like you, Scott, that ending was a powerful moment for me, because it's like, dude, this is what it was all about. I just needed to know that you knew. And then like, did you have to be so hard? And in my mind, I'm like, yes, the kind of kid you were and the way that you.
And if you want to be a badass,
I had to. You
got to learn from a badass.
Yeah, you have to. He knew what he knew. He was already in the military. He knew what was waiting on him, and he knew what life he was going to choose. And I'm a stepdad, so I get that side of it too. It's like I know what I'm trying to prepare you for. And I have mostly daughters, and I've spent all their lives from the time that I come in until they became grown women. Like, look, I know what's waiting on you out here. I know what you need to be prepared. And I'm like, Garp, I'm fighting with them, and they have their own ideas and what they want to do. Like, you are not understanding how dangerous the world is.
Yes.
I get this. So, it's a lot of that I could relate to. And I was like, it was almost a tearjerker for me at the end, to see how that all came together. And it's like, and he knows what he's throwing Luffy to. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead. I apologize.
No, you go ahead, man.
No.
He knows what he's throwing Luffy into, and I'm speaking just strictly from the series, no other information from the manga, but he knows that he's not throwing Luffy to the wolves. He's really not. That's why he fights him. I need to know that you can handle what's coming, because I love you. And that's his way of showing his love for his son, for his grandson, that, okay, this is what you want. you fought me. You've proven that you're prepared for it, as best you can be. Just know that I'm not going to be there to protect you. And up until this point, truth be told, I have been. There was no caveat because Garp was there.
Man, and there's got to be that moment where dad experiences and realizes that the son truly does not need him now. And that's a bittersweet moment for any parent.
Right.
But it's one where you're celebrating and crying at the same moment. And that's why that scene is just so damn good. I don't know the name of the actor who did Garp, but God, he rocked that role.
Oh,
He
man.
just rocked that role.
Mhm.
He's good in everything he's in. He was a Spartan.
He is.
He was a Spartan in 300.
There you go. So
Yep.
we've jumped and talked about Garp in the final scene, but Rio, why don't you go ahead and get us back on track to the thing we're going to do, and go ahead.
Let me see where we are now. I'm gonna check my compass mentally. There is one thing that I did want to add, I think, to sort of the absent father trope in Japan. This is just a theory of mine, but I think it's not necessarily, it is cause and effect that it's common in Japan, and we see it a lot in media. But I also think that shonen manga is a very it's a hard push for marketing. It is for profit, and you want to appeal to the largest market. And what I think we're seeing is it's sort of an easy trope that is relatable to a lot of people, right? So sort of cause and effect, and back to the cause again. Kind of like in American media, we get a lot of like fighting against the odds, fighting out of the circumstances that you're given, rags to riches stories, that sort of thing. We're attracted to that because that's sort of what we can relate to.
And
anyway,
dads tend not to be part of that story.
True.
Like,
yeah.
the dads aren't part of that story. It's all about you taking over the world. Now that we're back in that topic, I can't help myself. I got to do a nerd neuro drop for a moment here. Because one thing we don't talk about enough, particularly in American culture, is dependence in relationships. And the fact that children do become who they are at a large part out of what they resist with their parents.
Right.
And data truly indicate that a baby bird will sing Daddy Bird's song all day. Because when the daddy bird sings, it activates the baby bird's brain to sing. However, at some point, when the baby's brain has learned the song, its own brain starts to inhibit the daddy's ability to make it sing. And you think, what the hell is that? Well, one of these days, that bird's going to be flapping, and he can't just be doing what everybody else is doing. Even if he's with other people, she's got to do what they've got to do in their space at that time. They can't just do what everyone else is doing. So they have to be able to inhibit the influence that everyone else has on them. We don't talk about that scientifically. There were philosophers who talked about it, where we develop a self out of our resistance of reactions with other people. And that just doesn't get enough credit. And that's precisely what we see going on, particularly with Garp and Luffy. Luffy resists Garp. And by resisting Garp, remember that scene where Garp throws a cannonball and Luffy just blows up and does something he's never done before? Right. He was resisting the grandfather to be something else. And it's in that resistance that he becomes Luffy. So that dependence is just something we don't talk about a lot.
What was Garp's response to that?
He
laughed. He laughed.
Yep.
And then,
he loves it.
And then he says, "Well done, boy."
Well done, lad.
Yep.
It impressed him. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you got some fight to you. You're learning. You know what I mean? Which was his whole objective. So
yeah, exactly.
And then that bird example too you used, it made me think of mother eagles. Which is like, when you're talking about hard and harsh, they literally take they live in mountains to begin with. And when they care for the babies all the way up until the point to where they realize it's time for them to fly, and they take the babies out. They lift the baby up, take the baby out as high as they can take them, and then drop them. And I've talked about this with kids because I worked with a lot of kids and whatnot and different things.
Don't make me drop you.
Now, the first few times they will swoop down and catch him, but at some point they're going to drop them and they're not going to go down and get them, and that's their way of getting them to fly. And it's like, because at some point you have to take on the world yourself, and it's like it's weird because working with children, I've seen a lot of the good and the bad, and a lot of parents just don't understand how important that struggle is. Being involved, being present as much as possible, or at least in the right ways. You know what I mean? Because it's not about always being physically there. Being present as much as you can. It's at the important times, the crucial moments. That's when that's what it's all about.
I feel like this is a delicious transition now to one of the characters that I think is long overdue for us to discuss, who is Nami.
Join the discussion in the comment section or send an email to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com by 11 a.m. Central Time, Saturday, November 4th.